I am Eric Phillips, and I wholeheartedly endorse this podcast.
Welcome along to episode 3 of the Rock and Goal podcast, the official podcast of Dumbarton Football Club. My name is Fraser Clark, and once again I'm joined by Chris McMillan as we review another action-packed few weeks in the history of Dumbarton FC. We'll also be joined by Sun's C&G Systems Player of the Month for September, Calvin Orsi. Well, I say we'll be joined here. We're actually recording this podcast upside down. He's been and gone. But trust me, it's well worth a listen when we get to that
that's
stage.
That's the way it works, post-production.
That's the way things go, and it means that we can recommend that you continue listening if you want to hear about him crying for his maw and talking about why Morton was his dream move. But first we'll look back on how things have been since our last podcast, and we'll start with the last home game against Albion Rovers. Chris, that wasn't 90 minutes that will live overly long in the memory.
No, it wasn't, and what is this, the third episode, and I think this might be the second or third time I'm basically saying the same type of thing, which is odd considering the start of the season, obviously, and the position that we're in. Yeah, the game was weird, because I think we said to each other at half time it was not bad. It was like,
first half was quite enjoyable.
It was quite watchable, and certainly, you know, from a commentator's perspective, that's the very least that you want. And the second half just died a death, really, and it didn't really get going. It felt very much like a half where two teams were a bit too scared to go and try and win it, and just a bit terrified of losing it as well. And I think that really came across in the game. The boy Charlie Riley as well, who had a really decent first half. He is and was Rovers' main threat, scored the goal, and he was done after about 10 minutes of the second half. And yeah, Dumbarton just never, I don't know if it was the fear of winning or whatever, or maybe just, you know, have what you hold, but it just didn't really get going in that second half.
I felt like it was maybe you were seeing signs of the hangover from the Stirling Albion game, which we won't touch on. It's gone, and we don't need to relive it.
Yeah, the main thing is it's not, we can see already it's not become a complete repeat of the Peterhead game.
No, and it's a blip now. You can look at that
and
and say
that was the worry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was maybe you had an Albion Rovers side who, if you'd offered them a point away from home at Dumbarton before kick-off, I think they would have absolutely taken it, and I think they'd be quite pleased with that. And you had the Dumbarton team that thought, right, hang on a minute, point here, it is well within our grasp, let's stop the rot. And yeah, the second half, I think you had two teams who were, I don't want to say they were happy with the draw, I'm not sure they would. I think Albion Rovers maybe would have been, Suns wouldn't say they were happy with the draw, but I think the players maybe would have been relieved to get back in, and just that's the Stirling Albion game has been and gone, it's over, and we've stopped the rot, we've been defensively solid again for 90 minutes, and we've scored a goal. Okay, it's from the penalty spot again, but we're back up and running. We've got the show's back on the road again.
It's interesting you mentioned the penalty spot. I'm glad you did. We have already spoken about the fact that a lot of goals are coming from the penalty spot. You know, that was obviously the case against Albion Rovers again. Is that still a concern in your mind at all, or?
It's weirdly a home thing, I think. I can't get my head around it, but it seems to weirdly be a thing that's happening at home an awful lot. I mean, that's a lot of, I think his son's last goal from open play at home would have been, he says, looking at Chris as he pulls through his mind. I'm trying to think if we've actually got to commentate on one since we reintroduced streaming, and I'm not sure that we have done at home.
What was the first game we did?
First game was Elgin, which was 2 penalties from Ali Love.
Bonnie Rig, penalty. Albion Rovers, penalty. So we've done 4 penalties,
and I think
4 home goals.
His son's home form has been really good. It's been almost flawless. I think that will be a slight frustration. Not that goals from penalties don't count, and as Stevie Farrell says, you only get penalties by being in the opposition box and by being a threat and by being a danger, which Dumbarton have been. But I think I was maybe a wee bit more concerned of it prior to the Cumnock game. And then the Cumnock game, okay, there was another penalty in that, but Sun scored twice from open play. One, you know, really decent, a great time in the game, a really good cross by Ross McLean, a really aggressive header by Gregor Buchanan, and then Finlay Gray doing what Finlay Gray does. And then obviously last week at Annan scoring a really well worked goal is maybe just sort of like, it's maybe an anomaly at the moment.
Yeah, well, so if we're looking at it in the sense of the Albion Rovers game, it was maybe more a case of let's just not lose, let's not let that Stirling game bleed into anything that we're trying to do. And although it was a bit weird, it's probably a game that was there for the taking for maybe either side, and then they've probably both just maybe written it off a little bit, move on. But we mentioned after that game, almost regardless of what the Albion Rovers result was going to be, the Cumnock game, that result then takes a whole different perspective on it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And how did you feel when they equalised? Because how many times have you seen those types of games, especially in the Cup, wet night, like, TV?
It was perfect for an upset, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And if I was watching that, if that was Cumnock against Stirling Albion, or Cumnock against Stenhousemuir or Annan or whoever from League 2, then I'd have really fancied them at that stage. But I think what Suns did really well was and it's what you don't want to see as a fan watching as a neutral, and it's what you wouldn't want to see on telly. They just managed the game so professionally. Like, they killed every team's going to have a spell in a game. It might be 10 minutes at the start, it might be 10 minutes in the second half, it might be the last 10 minutes. Every team in every game is going to have a spell where they're on top, and Suns really dominated this first half, but not in a kind of, I'm going to say dominated, but without dominating, if that makes sense. They did enough to manage the game. There was nothing really to get the Cumnock fans into the game, and I think Cumnock's manager said afterwards that he was so disappointed with how they performed in the first half, and I would agree with that. I was expecting a lot more, but that was largely because Dumbarton kept possession, because they didn't really give Cumnock a sniff. And to be fair, they started the second half well. They got their goal. It was a defensive mistake. The guy still has to finish it off and all that, and then it was like, right, okay, what are you made of, Dumbarton? Because then the fans are getting behind it. Then it's easy for players to go, hang on a minute, like, everyone is rooting for us.
And there would have been nerves in the fans and probably a couple of players.
Absolutely, and it would be that, well, don't make us the upset, don't make us what ended up happening to Annan in that ridiculous game with Pollock, which is one of the most enjoyable 90 minutes that I've watched. But say after the goal, maybe for the 10 minutes, Dumbarton were a wee bit rocky, and then it was just like, no, we're the better team here. We're the better team in the first half. We're playing at a higher level. We grabbed the game back by the kind of scruff of the neck. To be fair, a massive part of that was Ryan Wallace coming on, and just the intelligence he's got, the way he uses his body, the way he knew where to position himself, just it almost calmed things back down. And I think in these cup ties, if the underdog's going to win, it needs to be a frantic cup tie. And if the big team's going to win, it needs to be calm, and they need to control it and dominate it and dictate it. And that's what Dumbarton did to get over the line. And I think if you'd offered any Suns fan a 3-1 win in that performance, they would have bitten your hand off. It was a really professional job, and it reflected well on the players, and it reflected well on the management and the club on telly, to basically see them going down there and overcoming a potential banana skin cup tie with, I don't want to say with relative ease, but in a really professional way. They looked like a club who were playing a couple of divisions higher.
I think the turf would have been slippy enough without banana skins on there due to the weather. Have you ever been that wet? I wasn't there, but oh goodness, I was watching on BBC Scotland. I saw the second half, to be fair, because I was working it a little bit earlier on, but just the sight of Ryan Stevenson and I think it was Julie Fleeton just under those massive umbrellas. Steve-O doesn't look like the type of guy who likes being out in the rain.
No, I don't think he does. His clothes are too stylish. They don't look as good when they get wet. But
what if they shrink a little bit? They're already quite tight.
They're quite tight, and he's a fairly built guy. In fact, if they shrunk, he'd just take them off and show off the tats. So it was ridiculously wet. I mean, I think at most grounds you go to, there'll be somewhere where you can get a wee bit of cover. Cumnock obviously had sectioned the ground off in half, and strategically Dumbarton fans had the half without any cover, and when Suns fans went to stand underneath the wee TV gantry where the commentator was, or where the cameraman was, a BBC man wearing very officious BBC clothes came and chased them away, so they had to go and stand in the rain. So I ended up in my sort of big bench jacket looking like something from Star Wars, and a guy who was down from us saw that we had like a spare umbrella, because I was like, I can't be bothered folding an umbrella, so we ended up renting our umbrella out as well. So it was nice to see fans coming together in that sort of way. It's uplifting.
And did you get a pie?
No, ironically I didn't end up getting a pie because the queue was too big by the time I got there, and I thought, nah, I'll just leave it. I can't. I'm soaked, and my pie's going to be soggy, and you don't want to. No, I can't.
don't. That's plenty. Yeah. Oh dear.
That is staying in.
That was going down an alleyway that I was not content to go down.
So, let's move on to Annan Athletic. And you were there, I wasn't, as the listeners probably figured out. I'm not required at away games. So unless there's some highlights, I don't get to see the away games, and lo and behold, there was no highlights from Annan. That's fine, I'm not raging, but I've not seen anything.
Yes.
But I was talking to you beforehand, so I've seen a photo of Greg Wild scoring the goal And I said to you, I think I know what type of header that was. Cushioned, looped over the goalkeeper, which you confirmed, and I am delighted.
It must be like the olden days when there was no highlights, and the only way of getting to see how a game went, and I remember this growing up, was like if we hadn't been to an away game, we'd got a result, then I just would be like excitedly refreshing the website, waiting on Donald Fullerton's photos to go up in case he had one of like goal celebrations, because like goal celebrations I just love, and that way you can start to paint a wee image of what it was like. But no, Annan was it was a very much a sort of down to bare bones Dumbarton team. Obviously, John Gemmell out long term. Declan Byrne, which we'll need to touch on, is out for 2 months, which is a huge blow. And it seems like he was maybe playing through it a wee bit, and that's why performances had dipped a wee bit, or he wasn't getting as much game time. And Ryan Wallace obviously suspended in that one. But Annan was, I think, the definition of a very hard fought 3 points. I thought Dumbarton managed the game really, really well when they took the lead, and it's something that we've seen a lot from this Suns side, is that when they take the lead, their management of the game is really good. So Annan had, I think, I don't want to say over 70%, but round about the 70% possession mark, and I saw somebody kicking off on Facebook about that, but they had 1 shot on target. Now, if you go away from home and you restrict a team to 1 shot on target, and you win that game, and you keep a clean sheet, I think every manager in the country would be taking that.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, Faz said as much, didn't he?
He did, and it was really interesting post-match, because he spoke, like he was quite kind of fired up that he didn't feel the team were getting the credit that they deserved. And I mean, the stats don't lie, and he rhymed them off, and we've looked into them a wee bit as well. The stats do not lie. Dumbarton,
do you think he felt that a little bit as well, coming off the back of that defeat at Stirling Albion?
I think to a degree, yeah, because I think the start to the season had been, or was, stroke to a degree still is phenomenal. Like, it's beyond...
It was record-breaking.
Yeah, it's beyond Dumbarton fans' wildest dreams, and it almost felt with some people, and I get this because of how the past few seasons have been, that it's like waiting on it to fail so you can go either I told you so, or I knew it was too good to be true, I knew it would all crumble. And almost the recent results, whilst they haven't, you know, the form's tailed off a wee bit. I spoke to Brett Long afterwards though, and he was like, it's 4 games that we didn't win in, it's not the end of the world. Like,
it's going to happen.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen to every team in this league. I almost feel like the way that the run obviously ended down at Stranraer, and then with the Stirling game after that, like I said, people were expecting it to come to an end. People were expecting it to fail. I don't want to say they were willing it to fail. That's not true. But there was almost I think with an element of some people, I told you so aspect. I knew it was too good to be true. Now we'll plummet down the league. And to be fair, I was sat in Pine Bovril before the game at Annan, and saw somebody posting that Dumbarton, like Suns fan in the thread, that Suns would be lucky to avoid relegation this season. And like, I understand that there is a pessimism with being associated with Dumbarton Football Club. Like, I am on the more optimistic side, and I still have that pessimism, and I still expect when things are going well that they're going to go the wrong way, like, pretty soon. It's just inbuilt in all of us, I think. But let's look at the cold, hard, bare facts. Dumbarton have almost got as many points as they got last season. They weren't automatically relegated last season. Dumbarton are sitting second in the league as we record this podcast. They're level on points with the team at the top of the league, and if it wasn't for a kind of crazy 12 goal swing in one game, Dumbarton would be, well, there would be, what, a fingernail between them and Stirling Albion. There would be very, very little in it. This has been an outstanding start to the season. Now, people can say what they want about performances and things like that, and I fully understand that, and I think everybody's dream is for a team that's scoring goals, playing Man City-esque football and winning games. But if you had to pick one of those things, which one are you picking? You're picking the winning games every day of the week, aren't you? And that's what Dumbarton have been doing.
And so is the manager.
And that's what Dumbarton have been doing this season. So, look, nobody knows how the season's going to pan out. And again, Faz has said that, like, you know, could not win for the next, what would it be, 20 odd games and end up in a relegation battle. Or we could win the next 20 games and end up, you know, romping to the league title. But I do think there maybe needs to be a bit of an appreciation for how good this start has been, and just enjoy it. Like, this is already this season, in terms of games I've been to, I've seen Dumbarton win as many games this season as I did in the whole of last season. In terms of, and I went to, I think I only missed maybe one game last season, Cove away, I think, maybe. I certainly didn't miss many. And it's a lot of travelling that we all do, and it's a lot of nervous Saturdays if you're watching it on Twitter or whatever. So see when we win a game, just enjoy it. Like, see, the performance isn't great, you've got 3 points. At the end of the day, the league table isn't based on performances. It's not based on goals scored, it's based on 3 points.
Yeah, and that's what Stevie Farrell was saying to you after the Annan game, and he was extremely bullish about that as well. But it's essentially telling the fans to enjoy the situation, enjoy the, title race.
He's called it that.
His words. He's called it a title race. He's told the fans to enjoy the title race. Maybe there's some fans out there that won't quite agree with that choice of phrase, but enjoy it and get behind it. And so you mentioned there that we had a little look at the stats. So he did mention that he didn't think there'd be many other clubs. He did specify after 12 games that would have the points per game that Dumbarton have got in the UK.
Yeah.
So I did have a little look into that, and he's not wrong. So in Scotland, only Celtic and Rangers, obviously, have got more, and that's after 12 games. So Celtic have got 2.75 and Rangers have 2.42. But that's to be expected. That's ridiculous. But that's in the whole country. Only those two have more. Stirling have the same, obviously. That's after 12 games, 2.17. So that's the figure that we're looking at, 2.17 for Dumbarton. In England, after 12 games, it's only Arsenal who have 2.58. They've had a remarkable start to the season. Their fans are in dreamland.
Yep.
And Manchester City, who have 2.42, and that's after 12 games as well. So it's only Rangers, Celtic, Arsenal and Manchester City after 12 games that have got better than Dumbarton and Stirling Albion. I went a little bit lower down, but it is difficult because there's obviously more games in the English lower leagues. But Plymouth and Ipswich in League One have got better. Ipswich they're second, they've got 2.18, and Plymouth are top, they've got 2.41, but they've both played 17 games, and only in League Two it's Leyton Orient who've played 16, and they're at 2.44, and they're top of the league as well. So I don't know whether Stevie Farrell went through these statistics himself before he said that. It felt a bit more like a spur of the moment type phrase, like I don't want to say accusation or anything like that, but the numbers are there. It does back it up. It really has been a remarkable season, and there's not really many other teams that can touch them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think I'm more than happy to sort of, you can listen to people's concerns, and I fully understand that people want Dumbarton to play better football, or if they only come to home games, they although the home form's been good, they want to see them score from open play very often, as we touched on. I understand that, I fully get that, but I think maybe there's a bit of, take a step back and think about it. If you were, see if Stirling Albion had this start and Dumbarton were maybe sat on 15 points, mid-table, some like 5th place, we'd be looking at Stirling Albion, and if their fans were complaining, we'd be going, complaining about a kill for a start like that. I was actually was speaking to one of the local reporters down in Annan last week, because that's obviously, that's what you do. You just have to socialise with people who do your job in different parts of the country. And I tipped Annan to finish second in the league this season. I thought they looked really, really strong, and for the past couple of years under Peter Murphy, save for a couple where they've dropped down, they've been right up there fighting for promotion, and I thought this could be Annan's time. They've got a really good squad. They've got a striker in Tommy Goss who's absolutely flying at the moment. They've got a cracking goalkeeper in Greg Fleming. Right throughout the team, there's a lot of quality going on there, and they've obviously had a really poor start to the season. And he was taken aback by Fazzy's comments, because he was like, "Are your fans, you're not happy with the start?" And I was like, no, they're not. Like, there are some people who've been like, the results have been good, the performances haven't, and there's some people that are like, we're getting very, very lucky. Luck only takes you so far, and I don't think luck is as big a factor after this many games into the season. But also, he was like, well, any Annan fan, I can tell you, would have bitten your hand off in a second if you said you want to swap positions. So, yeah, I've heard it said a few times, and I think it's a really interesting point, that Dumbarton almost started too well. I don't know what you think about that. I can see you sort of thinking about it. Start with, 7 consecutive wins? Yep. People expect wins every week.
Yep.
And when that starts to slip a wee bit, which it will do, and we had Martin McNiff on the podcast a couple of months ago, and he said, when we lose a game, it's how we respond to that that's important. And I think Dumbarton have almost started too well. If you split it up, if you give Dumbarton Stirling Albion start, and they lost on the opening day, and it took them a wee while to get a run of results together, but now they're level on points, exactly the same number of points as Dumbarton as we record this podcast. And you ask any Albion fans how they're feeling, they are absolutely loving life at the moment, and I think they're on 7 straight wins or something obscene like that as well themselves, so they are flying. Did Dumbarton start too well? Or, well, of course they didn't start too well, but is that maybe causing issues? I think it might be, and it's just take a step back and look at the league, look at where we were last season, albeit in a higher division, and go, you know what, see if Dumbarton are winning games. Makes my Saturdays an awful lot happier.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the nature of the way that the run ended, it can happen. You're away, rescheduled game, cold Tuesday night in Stranraer.
Can you do it in a cold Tuesday night in Stranraer?
There was still some fight in that performance. It was 2 goals in 10 minutes to bring it back. You concede in the last minute. It happens.
Yep.
I think there was so much on the Stirling Albion game. I think if you go away to Stirling Albion, especially where they've ended up and the run that they've gone on, if it's a tight game, you maybe lose 1-0. You're away at the first meeting against what is probably going to turn out to be your closest rivals. It happens.
Yeah.
And it's about how you bounce back. I really think that the manner of the defeat maybe, but the scoreline and the similarities to the start of last season and that defeat at Peterhead, and it just all started unravelling, and I think that's a real big part of it. But you said you have to bounce back. Martin McNiff said that, and this Suns side have shown that in the next 3 games.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the Peterhead game last season, which we keep going on about because it felt like such a turning point, but I think that is the ideal one to explain why this is happening, because Dumbarton fans last season, and I include myself in that, I think after the start, which by the way was statistically nowhere near as good as the start to this season, there was still quite a few defeats in there, but after the start last season I was going up to Peterhead thinking, you know what, we can push for the playoffs here, maybe not finishing them, but we can push for 4th and maybe finish 5th or 6th, but we can certainly put together a playoff push. And then it unravelled, and I think that's why we're seeing this from Suns fans now. They're going, nah, you fooled me once, you're not going to take me again, but maybe it is the time to start believing.
The Rock and Roll Podcast.
Welcome back to the Rock and Goal Podcast, and as you can see if you're watching on the stream, we are joined by the C&G Systems Player of the Month for the month of September. I think I'm right in saying Calvin Orsay. Calvin, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
And getting your head around being on a podcast in the salubrious facilities that we have on offer.
I feel like Joe Rogan.
So, Calvin, obviously thank you for joining us and congratulations on Player of the Month. Talk me through how this season has been for you, because last year, and we spoke about it after Cumnock, but last year you obviously spent a lot of time up front. You switched out wide this season, and it's been like a different player.
No, definitely. I was always a winger. I was never a striker, but just the way it happened, the gaffer wanted me to play there, and it suited well for the start of the season. And then eventually, obviously, we took a dip as we went down, but eventually was just saying to him that was one of my favourite positions. This season he's gave me the chance because I was in his ear, obviously saying it last season, and eventually he gave us the chance, and it's suited a lot for the way we play, and it's just gone well. It's just I probably not much more to say. It worked out.
I feel like you and Aaron Linus as well have built up a really, really decent partnership down that right hand side, and it was something. Remember the Steny away game back at the end of August, which was like really, really evident. The two of you just kind of knowing where each other were, constantly talking to each other. So how good's it been playing with him? And also you'll go up and down that line all day long behind you.
Well, it's good because I was actually at Brecon with Aaron for 2 years, so I knew him very, very well before, and funnily enough, we both played in that side, so it always worked out for us, and I knew when he came, it's just a familiar face that knows how I play.
So is there anything as well, you said that you started the season up front, you wanted to go back out wide. I just wanted to ask about, is there a little thing about having the number 9 on your back? Do you think maybe fans are judging you a little bit more when you've got a 9 on your back rather than a 7, even if you're playing out wide?
Maybe so, because the difference with having 9 in the back is it just says goals. Do you know what I mean? And I felt that I brought more than just goals, in the sense obviously as a striker that's what you want, but I would work a lot, I would try and hold it in, I would like to turn and try and get people, but for you're judged on how many goals you get at the end of the day as a striker, and I feel somebody like Deco, Gemo, Waldo, that's more suited to them, and I believe they can fill that role better than I could. It is the same way as I could fill a certain role in the wing that they couldn't, so I agree that is probably more pressure in that sense. And it's not that I wasn't up for the challenge, it's just that what didn't come to me as naturally as playing wide did, because I'd played it for such a young age.
So let's jump back then, and it's something that I love doing on the podcast, and you obviously started your career with Aberdeen, but before that you're from Yoker, you're kind of a local guy like Martin McNiff, who we had on the podcast as well. So talk me through the kind of your first steps in football. Who did you play with at Boys Club, and where did it all start?
Actually, so long ago, I played for a team called Southside. I think it wasn't even a local team as well. We had so many more local teams. I don't know why I went there, but my mum obviously found an ad in the papers. It was for a local team there, and then she actually got my cousin Carlo that played for us last season. She got the both of us into it, and his older brother, and we all eventually started playing there. At 8 or 9 years old, I went to Livingston. I signed with them when I was 10, so I was there for a year and couldn't sign because you can't sign till you're like 10 or something, certain contract. But so we played there for a couple of years. I went to Aberdeen 12 up until 18. I lived up there for 2 or 3 years, and then I was at St Mirren where I made my debut, and then I've been everywhere. And then Brecon for a couple of years, Malton, and then the Michael Dumbarton.
How quickly did you realise, first of all, I guess, that you wanted to be a footballer, and secondly that, because everybody grows up and everyone wants to be a footballer, and most people end up like us two jobbers kind of sat here with only like a kind of pipe dream to have any career at any level. But how quickly did you realise that was what you wanted to do, and I guess secondly that it was quite realistic, like if you got your head down and you knuckled on with it, that it was possible?
That's the funny thing about football. People say that, but it's like nothing's certain. Like, do you know what I mean? You're just happy at the time that you're in it, and you always aim to see where you can go. But probably when I went to Brecon, because we were playing in the Championship. I know it was part time, but still it was in the Championship, and then you're playing against some teams, and you're actually thinking, hey, if I played well against them, I could maybe nip a full time team here, and it starts to become real when you're playing against people that are in the same league as you, just that they're at a full-time level, so you start to go like, it could be pursued as a full-time dream here.
You touched on it there, that you obviously moved up to Aberdeen for a wee bit when you were really, really young as well. So what was that like? That must have been quite difficult as a kid, moving away from home, away from the family, and I just sort of following the dream.
That was one of the hardest periods of my life, because I'm a total homebird, as you see. Yoker is like my gran, my aunties, uncles, everybody still stays there. I'm still there most of the time. Friends are all there, so it was difficult for me just having to. I think it makes it harder as well that maybe, and like I heard Dundee that they had their boys stay up there and they all stayed in the same compound or something like that. That would have been easier, but I stayed with a foreign boy, Jem, and I stayed with a landlady, and you can't go into the fridge. They're trying to make it homely as they can, but like for you, you're walking in and you're going, oh, should I be taking something? She's there, so could I know? Do you know what I mean? You just there. It's not as homely as you feel it should be. And I missed my mammy. I was phoning my mum all the time. I was only like 15, 16.
She's going to need to listen to this now that you said that.
I know, I did, and I would always been. And I don't know if I gave myself the chance, because I would go home every weekend to see everybody, and I remember I had a goalie coach that was telling us he's like, don't go home. He's like, I go home every now and then. He said, make this your home, and that is like you're just visiting. But I could never separate it. I would make it clear to people, I'm for Glasgow. I come up here. Do you know what I mean? And it just, that festers me. So I probably made it harder for myself than I probably could have.
So, obviously, I know that Aberdeen have that kind of Glasgow club down here, or whatever it is, the Glasgow boys who basically go up there. So who was in your Aberdeen team, and who were the kind of other Central Belt boys at the time?
There was a boy, Daniel Harvey, that plays for
MK Dons.
MK Dons.
Played
Danny
here for a bit.
Was very, very close with Danny. He's went on, done very well. I had a friend, Jamie Henry. He's moved to England. I don't know what level, but it's like still a good level for where they're at, but still a good few divisions down. I'm trying to think. Jeez, I'm not putting us in good light. I'm not putting any of the Glasgow boys in good light. I don't know what teams some of them play for, but we had an old like Aberdeen like legend that used to take us, Peter Weir, and he was one of the best coaches I've had. He was old school tough, and he played in the wing, so me and him had a really good relationship. Even when I wasn't good in school, I think my mum would go to him and tell him to give me a telling off. But some of the boys, I'm on the spot. I'm trying to think.
I feel guilty.
I know.
I dropped you right in it.
Darren Hines, a boy that was, I think Darren, I don't know if he was here or not, but he's at Morton full time now as well. So there was quite a few boys. Off the top of my head, I can't really mind, but there's a few that have went on and still played full time. I feel.
I wanted to ask you just quickly, because you brought him up, but Carlo, when he was here last season. I mean, how much did you enjoy playing with him? He was a player that really caught my eye. I thought he had a really, really good season despite the obviously the issues with relegation. But did you enjoy playing with him, and especially when you were down that right hand side at times as well?
Carl's a good player, and he's it was actually me that saying to my gaffer, I was like, Gaffer, I think he's not going anywhere on loan. I think it would be a good option if you're interested. And I think as soon as he heard, it was like on the phone straight away, and I'd already spoke to him before I'd mentioned it to the gaffer. And as my cousin, I was like, I know what he was feeling. He was like, I just want to play. So when he came here, I was like, that will really, really help us. And it's good playing with your family. Obviously, people are only seeing the 90 minutes on a Saturday, but they're not seeing when I'm moaning at him and that at training. I'm trying to, because he's naturally probably quite a relaxed, lazier boy, but in the park he works hard. So I'm probably on his case all the time. But it's good playing with your family. Do you know what I mean? Especially we've got a good relationship, and he's adding to the team. So it was good. It was a good experience. I would, if I get the chance, I would do it again.
Oh.
It's a good experience when you're winning. I mean, when you're losing games, the household must be a wee bit frosty. In the family gatherings on a Sunday, or we're going out with Carlo's family, and you're just like, oh man, we're going to have to sit, and everyone will be going, how'd you get on at the weekend, boys? And you'll be like, no. It's
frosty regardless, we argue over everything. But no, obviously it adds a different dynamic, because you're taking home your Saturday's game, you're taking with you, and he's getting on each other. But one thing about him, he's quite good like that. We'll probably meet with Fester all week, and I'm like, oh no, I need to get. He's quite just. He knows that it's done. It's not gonna affect. Well, it's going to affect next week's game if you allow it. And I was probably a bit more like that. Would be desperate to play. And you just take it easy.
So he's got the kind of laid back Italian temperament, and you've got the kind of more fired up Italian temperament going on.
I knew you were going to say Friday there, yeah.
Aye, no, definitely. Aye, we must be from different parts of Italy.
So obviously you left Aberdeen and came back down much closer to home to St Mirren, and I think it was at 2016 I've got in my notes. So talk me through that time. That was that Alex Ray, Jack Ross sort of time, and Chris McMillan would have been kicking about the background at St Mirren Media around about that time as well, I think.
Yeah, I was. I had a couple of opportunities, but unfortunately you weren't playing when I was commentating there. So
yeah, it was, because it was Alex Ray at the start, and then Jack Ross was coming in just the first couple of months that I'd been there, and the difference, he flipped it. He was a good manager. I trained a lot with the first team when he was there, so it was good. I feel it's good just to be with these teams full time, and then you're coming back part time and stuff. It's a good dynamic. So it's because it's crazy as well, because some of the people don't know it. See, when you actually watch some of the boys for this level, when you played at that level, you don't realise how good the boys at League 1, League 2 really are, and some of them have maybe took care of themselves the same way. Maybe they've no had the luck. There's a lot of different things. So I'm blessed that I've seen two sides of the spectrum in football, and that's one thing I would probably say is there's probably a lot of boys still at this level that if they put their head to it could kick right on again.
Yeah, it was something, and not to sort of butter up what you were just saying, but it's something that I don't think people appreciate is how high the level is in League 2. Like, to be a footballer at any level, any sort of decent level, is ridiculous. And I think back to when I was at school, and the best players in my year, aside from my good self, the best players in my year, I don't think any of them are still playing, apart from one who is, I think, with Troon or someone like that, kind of west of Scotland League, which is still a good level, obviously. But like, you think back to the players that I was at school with, and they've obviously not been good enough, not been committed enough to make it. And you must see it in training, like, the things that boys are doing. You're someone who's played at a higher level, but the things that boys are doing at this level that makes you think, hang on a minute here, there's so much talent in lower leagues. No,
definitely, I agree, because I don't think most like Scottish football, you probably base it more, the players being as good, their cultural habits, like you're talking about maybe people. I remember I stayed with the boy Jem, he was from Frankfurt. He came straight for there to play with us, and it was the difference in his diet. Like, this is just so I'm not going too far away from it, but he's talking about, we would be eating like chocolate as we were humans, you know what I mean? we'd be eating like Nutella or whatever, and he brought this German chocolate, and I was like, that's like rabbit food. I was like, that's terrible. And he was like, it had seeds, raisins, everything. I was like, you'd feed that to the birds. And that's what he would eat. He just, the difference, you would go for dinner, you would be having, or you go on a night out, you would have like a glass of wine, maybe a few, and you'd have other boys that, I'll not say their names, they'd be spangled at the boat steaming, do you know what I mean, in the nightclub. It was just a different culture. That's just, and I'd say most things that probably affect Scottish players and maybe British players is their Saturday night. They enjoy their life. They don't probably discipline the same way as most these foreigners would probably leave their country at like 12, 13, 14 years old and move. I mean, I moved to Aberdeen 3-4 years down the road and was great for my mum, still at 18. So it's, do you know what I mean? It's a different culture, and I probably say that was a lot to do with it. But even when you're watching teams like Pollock, I think they were against
Annan the other night.
Annan, do you know what I mean? You can, even at junior level, you get some talent that just didn't have the discipline with the talent. So do you know what I mean? It has to be in tandem and put in with luck and a cocktail everything else. It just, do you know what I mean? So it's not everybody's got the same luck of the draw. It's just that when preparation makes opportunity.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah.
Sound like you're selling Herbalife on Facebook.
That's the title for the podcast there, isn't it? Yeah. It's got to be.
I need money for that.
You painted a great image there of the Aberdeen team night out and everybody just getting smashed in a nightclub, but this one German boy with like a wee glass of Malbec just sat at the bar, just watching everyone.
In the vest t-shirt with the chest out, as if it was like in between us and Magaluf, you know,
Yeah.
the chest. I was like, that is not the style. But he was a good looking boy.
So we've obviously touched a wee bit on your time at St Mirren, but during that you went out on loan to Queen's Park, and that I guess was your first proper taste of like serious lower league football. I was looking at some of the players that you would have played with at Queen's Park. Dario Zanata, Liam Brown, who we were talking about in the way in, who's a really, really good player. David Galt, who's one of my favourite players in the lower leagues ever to have not played for Dumbarton, and unfortunately also Ryan McGeever, you know, kind of bringing the general level down a wee bit. But talk me through your loan spell at Queen's Park. How enjoyable was that?
It was really good because I was only 19 and you're getting to play in Hampden and you're getting tickets for your pals. It was so real, do you know what I mean? And yeah, it was probably at that age as well, you're getting a taste of, this is what I am at 19, where could I be at 25 or 20? No, that I'm not happy here. I'm just
sitting in a chilly ball boys room at Dumbarton talking to two people behind an elephant costume.
Talking about how class we were at football in school, yeah.
I know it was a good experience. They like going out in the change rooms. It was amazing. Just getting to play first team football, but it was good. It was a brilliant, but it was also an eye opener, and you start going like this. Wow, is this how hard League One is? How hard is the SPL Championship going to be? And I don't think people really they take for granted how good these low leagues are. Like, see, even at Aberdeen, we would be there, and I would have boys coming in from Man U, Man City, and bear in mind they were like, when I start thinking now, they were like 25, 26, still never been near. Or they probably played in good levels in England, maybe League One. Some of them had played in Championship. They come to the SPL and go, how am I not getting anywhere near it? And they would, it's such a physical, hard like level of football, because they just take for granted because they're only basing it on the wage, knowing that the people that they're coming up against, and they would get shocked all the time.
Yeah, it's interesting as well because you're obviously a player who you're tall, you're strong. I'm not trying to flirt with you here, but you're tall,
Really?
You're strong, you're quick. So you're making that step, and maybe there's a level at youth team football where if you've got someone who's really strong, someone who's really quick, then they can have an impact at youth team level. And how often do you see them step up and all of a sudden they've got, you know, I'm trying to think in this Dumbarton team, they've got a Ryan McGeever or a Gregor Buchanan who just goes, nope, takes none of it and just smashes them early on. So was that something you found when you stepped up? You thought, hold on a minute here, like this is, physicality wise, this is going to be a completely different kettle of fish?
Oh, definitely. It's like, it's crazy because like the physicality, it becomes, I wouldn't say as much physically, but it's more up the higher level. It's probably more tactically better. You'll have because you've got all week to study it. And it's the fitness levels, but I mean, you're still playing against people, big like 14, 15 stone defenders that are putting their cell on the line. It's so physical, and I think just in general when you go to man's football, the leveling, it levels out a bit. It's just if you maybe think that wee bit quicker, you react that wee bit. It's the fine margins, and when people used to say it's like the 1% that add up, you'd be like, oh come on, what is a 1%? But see, generally when everything, like you're getting your diet right, you're thinking right, all these things at once, and you start to go, all right, these build up to 5-10%, and when you can't tell a young boy that, but I know now the saying, an older head and young shoulders. I get that now.
Do you like that physical side of the game?
We're Scottish, so we need it. I wouldn't say much like it, but no, of course. Listen, I think just as like Scottish players ourselves, we just naturally, we're no like Spanish players with the feet, so we just abuse our shoulders.
It's an interesting point actually, because I remember, and this might get laughed at a lot, but I remember Kyle Hutton when he was here, and I always felt, see if you were to drop Kyle Hutton into like the Spanish third division or something, like I think he would have been an absolute world beater at that sort of level when you get a wee bit more time in the ball. Like, he was good physically, but just when he had a wee bit of time in the ball, like he could carve teams right open, and I just think that was a really interesting point. Like, we always assume that people like the physicality because it is so physical up here. But like, how, you know, if I was to drop you into, I don't know, a Dumbarton equivalent club in Italy or in Spain or wherever, how do you think that would suit you?
Well, we always say this, right? But see, when like I agree with you, because I have these like thoughts in my head. I go, see if I went to like Spain or went here, would you have so much more time? Would you? But then again, when we play these teams like Celtic, you look at them, if you ever play against Celtic or whatever, you go, wow, they're next level, and then they go play against a Spanish team and it's like a total annihilation, so you're like that, like, wait a minute, it's like, was it not meant to be easier on the ball, because like they seem to never be able to keep it, so I don't know, but I do get that. It's like, I've spoke to people and they says it was less physical and you had more time, and I was like, if that's the truth, then it's a dream. You know what I mean? I'd love to be there.
You must fancy a wee season in Italy maybe at some point, no?
See the relatives.
Yeah.
I'd probably be good. I'm such a homebird, I don't know.
That's a good point. If you couldn't manage Aberdeen, then, you know,
Sicily might be a bit difficult, aye.
Aye.
The weather might help a bit, the food and aye. Anyway, so getting back
and the women.
You said that, not me. Getting back to slightly more salubrious surroundings, and you signed for Brechin, and that was obviously your kind of permanent move. Talk me through that time, because we were talking about it in the car, and for Brechin City that was obviously a really disastrous season, a really weird season. But
yeah, what was that like?
How did you keep going? Because as a young player, especially, like for any team in any league, like I'm thinking to boys club right the way up, like if you're not winning a game all season, you're trekking up to Brechin, like that must have been really hard going.
Should have had this in the contract, not be mentioned. You
can see the PTSD in your eyes then.
McGeever's maybe worse.
Oh, aye. Well, for McGeever it probably was worse because the age of it at the time, because see for me it was more like, obviously you want to win, you were trying to win, it was really disheartening every week, like, because we would always get the last 10 minutes, that was like the part-time in the full-time league, like we were blowing a gasket in the last 10 minutes and they would always get goals. So, but for me it was more, I was looking to, I'd left St Mirren, we were in the same league as them, I'd scored against them and stuff like that, so a lot of things in the season were good for me because I'd just left the club, and then you're scoring at their staying in front of all the boys that were in your same reserve team like a few months ago. But
is there like a wee element as well at that age where you're thinking, if I can get through this, you know, I'll be able to get through anything in my career?
Well, that's exactly what I was saying, and it was like more, I was more come probably from a selfish point of view. Most of the young players under like 22, 23 were probably thinking to themselves, right, we're playing the championship, we scored a few goals, get a few assists, there's potential to maybe go to a full-time team the next year. But like that wasn't my first thought, but it's like it was soothing the blow a wee bit. Do you know what I mean? You're thinking to yourself, right, I could still use this as to kick onto a bigger platform. So, but I think if it was now and it happened to me, it would be like, oh, your world would be shattered, because now you're at the stage you want to win something. That's what football's about. At the end of the day, when you're younger, it's about getting to a team where you can eventually win stuff. But now I'm at that stage where I want to win stuff. I want to win the league, this league. Do you know what I mean? It's a different aspect now.
And looking at the season after that as well for Brechin, that was obviously a disaster as well. What, looking back on it, and I won't put you through this for much longer, but looking back on it, what could have changed? Like, why could Brechin not turn that around? They changed manager, they changed players, they must have changed formation countless times. Like, why did it never turn round?
I think winning and losing is both a habit. I feel either way. I think even the likes of us, listen, I'm not talking bad about our team because I love our team, but we were amazing the first 5-6 games, and then the first 5 or 6 games carried us on for the next 3 or 4, because it, like, you're getting penalties, you're getting balls bouncing off people going in, because it happens. It's just that maybe it's something, it's how powerful your mind is, that you're already believing you're going to win. I don't know what it is, but it's like that, and that just had the counter effect. It was like we were getting beat all the time, so we were thinking, how are we going to get away a penalty? What ball's going to hit off me and go in? I hope it isn't me that hits off and goes in. It's like, so it just probably just becomes a habit. I feel that's why we couldn't turn it round, because it's just, it's like you're stuck in the mud after that. It just and the more you fight at it, the deeper you go.
Yeah, and obviously your time at Brecon did in a way have a happy ending because you got moved to Morton, so talk me through how that came about, because that must have been such a boost after a really difficult couple of seasons and you're back playing full time.
It was actually quite funny because I was in a restaurant at the time with friends, and obviously I was just like that. What am I going to do? Like, what am I going to do here in my career? I'm thinking, should I just go to Ibiza for a week and just forget about it? No, I was so I got a phone call when I was with my friends. I was like, I don't know what's going to happen about the football. 2 minutes later, my phone goes. I've answered it, and it was an agent, Alex McDonald, and he phoned me and he was saying, it's just the way he phoned me, but it was like out the blue. I was like, this is obviously a total wind up. So he's phoned me, he's like, by the way, I'm Alex, how you doing? He was like, Morton want to sign you, are you interested in coming in on Friday? And it was like a Wednesday, like 2 days, and I'm like, he said the pure wind up, and he's already like, David Hopkins is wanting you and stuff, and I was like, there you go, hung up, and I was like, somebody's trying to ban me up. I was like, one of you's ban me up. I was like, because this is quite a tender spot in my life. Like, I don't need this right now. And he was like, and then he was mailing me through Instagram, and I was like, oh, this is his real profile, and if he's not been hacked, then this could be quite legit. And I was like, so I phoned my mum and I was like, listen, I think that and my mum's one of the like pure old school. She's like, listen, if it's too good to be true, do you know what I mean? Don't get yourself too up about it. So eventually I was like, listen, I'm gonna just basically see if this is what it is. So I'll set my alarm, went with him, and then he's like, come meet me. And before he made me drive, so I was like, oh no, I was like, this is pure rubbish. So then I got there, and then eventually I'd signed and everything. And I was like, my mum, I was like, oh my god, I'm going to Ibiza, but I mean, like, I was like, this is amazing. It just wasn't planned. It's not as if like they spoke to my club or anything like that. I was in a restaurant, and then a few days later I'd signed for them.
So you hadn't had any contact with any other club at that point? No, nothing.
I hadn't even spoke to anybody. I was just, you're probably at that part in your life. It's just like, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? And then it just came up once. So I was doing like the interviews with them when I first got there. And bear in mind, you're talking about I've not got a team in mind. I've been part time. You're probably a bit less professional than you used to be at full time. So you're just like your pals, and then you're going in, you're doing interviews, and you're meeting all different people, and they're asking you to ask questions, and you're saying cringy stuff that you wouldn't have said if you were going for a full time team. I was like, yeah, it's my dream move and all that. I know that Morton's not a big club, but people are probably the other boys for the team that signed them. Like, it was a crackpot. So it was good, man. It was good experience, man.
How enjoyable was your time at Morton, and what was David Hopkins like to work under?
I loved Morton. I didn't expect to sign again with them, but I'd always done well with them. Like, the fans liked me, I got on with all the boys, and it probably cut quite deep because it was just a pure like instant thing. Like I was like to the boys, I don't know about the manager, I don't know if he fancies me or no, and they were like, no, you'll be fine. So that they're telling you that, and then you go in and you're like, oh, gutted, and then it was so I loved my time there, and it was quite local in my house. It was not far from Yoker, so ideal to me, you know. But my time there was good. It's like here as well. It's brilliant. So if you get a good bunch of boys, it's not a job. Do you know what I mean?
That's why you moved to Dumbarton then. You just looked at Yoker on the map and went, what's the nearest senior club? I'll just turn up at their training and maybe they'll take me. Is that how that happened?
I always thought I would beat Dumbarton. Now, you always have that team that you always think there's potential I'll be there. I don't know if it was just because it was down the road for me. I don't know, because I seem to always play against them in the Championship, like League One. I've played in all different leagues against them, so I always just thought I would come here, and I'm glad I did. Like, this would be like, if this club was like a full-time club, it'd be like perfect. Such a central belt for a lot of people. It's a good club. It's got a good wee stadium.
When you spoke to Stevie Farrell, then what sort of sold you on the move? Was it purely the locality aspect, or was it, because
thousands and thousands of pounds? No, it's
all the chocolate you can eat, right?
No, that was more convincing. But I know he was a good guy. I liked what his views, what he wanted the team to be, how he wanted to play, and it's just as a guy, he was just a nice man. Like, that's like.
Had you come across him before in any?
No, never. It actually wasn't, because I'd still another option. I'll not say it would, but I'd another option to sign with a Championship club full time, in the Championship, and for me obviously to pick a League One team over that, it must have been obviously made a good impression. I met him and I was just in you're thinking, if I'm going to be spending like a lot of time with a manager, do you know what I mean? Even though it's part time, you're 3-4 times a week, you're still more than you meet some of your family or some other people. So you want to be somebody that you go like, you know what, out with, if he's moaning at me or the net, he's still a good guy, do you know what I mean? And he's alright to be around, so that probably sold it for me.
How did you find adapting back to being part-time? Because obviously you'd been full-time, part-time, full-time, and then back to being part-time, so it's obviously a big change in lifestyle.
It probably was a massive difference, because I still was quite a routine person regardless anyway, so I would always just replace that with at least going to the gym early in the morning, but that was probably the only maybe thing that I did miss out, is the structure of just getting up and playing football like every day as a full-time job. I did miss that. I would love to be full time with a bunch of boys like it's in there. That would be a bit like what was that team with Vinnie Jones in that, innit? It's
The
Wimbledon,
the
the
crazy gang. That generally would be that, because there's some wild boys in there.
So we won't obviously stick in it for too long, but last season obviously did not end well, but it started so well and then it went down. How do you reflect on last season? Because do you feel that team underachieved for the quality it had?
Definitely. I think coming out the league should have never been an option. Like, even for boys, even when we were probably second bottom, we were thinking, no, this is just it'll turn. We were a good bunch of boys, and at worst we're a League One team. Do you know what I mean? But no, I don't know. We didn't expect that at all, because I mean we were top at one point, such a drastic turnover, and then I think that's probably put the fear of God into us, why we had to win last week against Annan, because we were probably thinking, oh no, is this a repeat? Is this that? And obviously it's quite far fetched, but you don't know, football can turn at any moment. So I don't know. It was a shock to all of us.
And so, what's it like to be in this dressing room in this team now, for yourself personally and the team? For you, this is probably the first time, you've already sort of touched on it, that you're in a title race at the top of the league. The manager's come out and said that it's a title race as well. You know, you've said you want to win this league, you want to win some silverware, some medals. Like, how has that been this season?
I think, I don't really know. I think a
different type of pressure, maybe, or
of course, because like as the gaffer always says to us, he says, if you can't deal with pressure, then don't play football. Like, it's a pressure job. If you don't, do you know what I mean? That's what it's about. And the higher levels you do go, the more pressure it becomes. And I think it's something we just need to deal with. It's a title race. I mean, you'd rather a race at the top than at the bottom, and I think we've just built a good foundation in the team, a good mindset, that we're all just together. We've got Matty, the sports science as well now, it's scientist. We've got like everything we've got added things that we didn't have before, and we've went to a league. There's no reason why we can't win. I'm not downgrade, because there's some good teams and good players in here, but there's no reason why we can't win it, and why we shouldn't.
Do you think it fires up the guys like, so you, Gregor Buchanan, Stuart Carswell, Greg Wild was obviously here for a bit last season, like right throughout the team, our players have been here last season. Do you think it fires you up a wee bit more, because I'm guessing there's almost that wanting to put it right, what happened last year? And we're seeing it with you, we're seeing it with Bucky, who's been phenomenal this season. Joe McKee's playing every week and playing really, really well. Cars has been phenomenal this season, that we're just seeing maybe players wanting to put things right from last year.
Definitely, because it's probably, it means more to them. Do you know what I mean? We've all been here together. It was a kick to the gut, and it's good when there's a good fuse that it's personal too. Do you know what I mean? The boys that have just come in, it's like they're just thinking, oh, we're going to win a league, but for us, we're thinking, no, it's about redeeming ourselves, and for the gaffer still, like, he's got that mindset. Franco, we've all got that, so I think that helps. And I think the fact that we've got so many boys still that were there from League One that could play Championship, some of the boys, do you know what I mean? I think straight away that's an advantage mentally always, because we've got players that could easily, if they turn it on, could be in Team of the Year, do you know what I mean? So it's good for us.
Right, last of all, because then we'll let you get on and get into changing room where the tunes are going in the background that we can hear, but here's a good question to put you on the spot, and I like to kind of throw one of these in at the end. But of all the players that you've been teammates with, if you could sign one for this Dumbarton team, who would it be? And I've just seen Chris do the kind of Vicente Del Bosque woofed face.
If I could sign one player to come...
Yeah, one player to come to Dumbarton who's been your teammate in the past. And you're going to get texts after this from all the guys you didn't pick.
I'm actually thinking, because I don't know. Do you know one player that's probably, I don't know if he's been a strange one or not, but there was a guy that I played with, it was our Morton captain Jim McAllister.
Yep.
Which is so good. Like, one of the guys, it's not just what he would do he was on the pitch, it was unbelievable. Like, I've never saw a guy, like, see when people say the demands in training, like, for like the top players, like, I never saw a guy that was like never no off it. He would, like, the oldest in the team, or one the oldest, he would win all the fitness tests, he would never give the ball away, he was just a good pro, he was a good guy. I would probably have him because I know he would have a good ripple effect in the team. I'm no saying skill wise, that's the top of my head who I think would just, as a winner to help us win the league, he would be right up there.
Now, am I right in saying Jim McAllister is now a kit man at Rangers? Have I made that up?
I know he is
He is, isn't he?
Yeah.
Which, not specifically at Rangers, but I know that we've spoken about it, and just like being a kit man at a kind of like fully high level professional club would just be like a dream.
I've genuinely applied for a couple of those jobs. Yeah,
But he is a diehard, like, I remember when you boys would say comments about Rangers and stuff like that, he would take the nap. He was a captain, though. Like, he genuinely, but like, he couldn't bear to like have any like bad chat about Rangers.
I think they call that staunch.
Massively. There's a few words for it, but we'll not say it.
Well, on that note, we will end our chat with you, Calvin, before it goes into an old formality that we don't want to get bowled down. But no, thank you very much for joining us. And if you score today, you have to give us some sort of commentary-related celebration.
I will do.
Excellent. Anything you want. It can be shushing the lips for the amount of times that we've mentioned your goal drought or anything like that. But whatever you want, just as long as it's commentary themed.
Thank you. Yeah, so I actually, just you mentioned the goal drought there, I will just throw in, see on a website I use quite a lot for the statistics, Transfermarkt, you're still credited with that goal on the opening day of the season, right at the start.
With Declan's
yeah.
That was me then.
The photos and the videos say it otherwise, but you're claiming it and the record books don't lie, so it's your goal.
Exactly.
Congratulations. Calvin, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
And too good, too bad.
You can really hear the tunes getting up in here now, so that means we're getting far too close to kick off and we really should have finished recording this hours ago. But we are now at Too Good, Too Bad, the stage where we select one thing that's caught our eye for the right reasons across the lower leagues over the past, well, however many weeks it is since we did a podcast, and one thing that's caught our eye for the wrong reasons. And Chris McMillan, I want you to start, and I want you to start with your bad. My too bad is maybe somewhat predictable, but the introduction of VAR in Scottish football, I know it's not at this level and only in the Premier League, which is a big relief. Oh goodness me. Well, I spend a lot of time watching a certain English team who have floated between the Championship and the Premier League, and in the Premier League with VAR it was absolutely awful. I couldn't stand it. It really took away from me. There was a game I was at, I don't know if you'll remember it, but there was a certain last minute equaliser went in from Robert Snodgrass, I think it was, at West Ham, and it got disallowed by VAR for the most ridiculous knock off Declan Rice's arm for a handball, and the weight and the cheer for the goal being disallowed by VAR was louder than the goal that we scored. And I think there's some people that would say, well, that's a good laugh, it's funny, you know, it was great, it's a second celebration, but for me, I just didn't like it at all. Now watching Championship football, I am so much more at ease with, alright, it might be offside, but that's it, that's what happens. And I was just absolutely terrified about the prospect of it being brought into Scottish football, mainly because of, you know, us as Scottish people and maybe certain fan bases and certain fixtures, which I'm sure we're not even... I don't know what you're talking about. Well, we've not even seen what the potential peak might be with that type of thing. And I don't think there was any, you know, massively particular howlers in the first, you know, week or so or anything like that. But I've dreaded it, and now that it's here, I'm fearing it. And also, how many times are we going to have to listen to Andy Walker on Sky Sports just going, oh, but they're checking it? Just like, that's just something I didn't need to hear. I'll just very, very quickly jump in and say that I agree with you. I'm not a fan of VAR. And also, last week, Tony Watt got sent off, and it wasn't going to be a foul at the time, I don't think. And then the VAR intervened and said it's a red card. Maybe that is the howler I was missing, actually. Then they appealed it, and it got downgraded to a yellow card. So they went to VAR, and VAR made a game-changing mistake. So I'm with you on that. My bad is going to be Sun's Scottish Cup opponent, so that obviously doesn't augur well, but it's going to be Clyde. I gave Clyde my 2 good at the start of the season. They started with a 4-1 win against Queen of the South, and they were absolutely fantastic that day. And since then, they've gone off a cliff. They've got 7 points. They're being reeled in by a Peterhead team that seems to add players every week.
I have that written down, falling off a cliff.
Yeah, that's the exact way of putting it. Peterhead, who have had a dreadful summer recruitment-wise, who seem to be signing players from here, there and everywhere and getting no tune out of them whatsoever. But Clyde are within touching distance for them, and they've parted company with Danny Lennon, which I think it was the right time. I think everybody accepted that, but it is a shame. Danny Lennon is a guy I've got a lot of time for. When you speak to, like, I think I've spoken to, a host of managers in lower leagues for doing games for like both papers and things like that, and Danny Lennon is one of my favourite managers to speak to. He's a really classy guy. His knowledge, his love for football just comes completely, like, it's so clear. He just loves talking about football. And I'm sorry to see him go, but it's obviously probably the right time for him. But I don't know where Clyde go from here. There's not an obvious candidate out there.
I also just wanted to bring up a very small selfish thing about the Scottish Cup draw. So I was watching that, and I think it got down to the last 3 balls, and it was Dumbarton, Clyde and Dunfermline. And I really wanted Dunfermline for us to kind of come full circle. That was the first game we did on Suns TV Live together, and I was really, really hoping for that. But
didn't even think of that potential.
Alas, we get Clyde again.
But yeah, so Clyde, but what we should also say, and it's a big get well soon from both of us, to Connor Duthie, who of course was Suns Player of the Year last season, and the change that we saw in Connor Duthie when he came in, he'd obviously been out of football for a wee while, came in last season and he was phenomenal. His fitness levels were incredible. He was a player that you could never ever say wasn't playing for the shirt. He scored a few important goals. He should have scored a few more. I think he could have easily had double figures, and I think he'll know that himself and won't mind me saying. But Connor, they found that he had a hole in his heart, and he's been through surgery for that, which looks like it's been successful. He's back in light training with Clyde. But to Connor Duthie, hopefully, if there is a man that can help turn Clyde's season around, then it's Connor Duthie.
Yeah, all the very best to you in your recovery, and get well soon.
So that leaves us with our 2 goods, and I'm going to start by hoping that I can use my cursing powers to bring this team back down to earth. My 2 good is Stirling Albion. Now, whenever I've given a team a 2 good on this podcast, they've gone off a cliff. So you can all see what I'm trying to do here. Apologies to Darren Young and to the folk I work with who are Stirling Albion fans. But
it's not great radio, but you are moving around. You're excited. You think that the curse is real.
I've got the power, and now I'm going to bring Stirling Albion down, and I'm going to get Suns back up to the top of the league, back to their rightful place at the summit of League 2. But no, to do a Lampardian transition there, in all seriousness, you have to hand it to Stirling Albion. They have been absolutely red hot recently. They are a really good team to watch, as well as being a team who've been on fire. They're scoring an awful lot of goals. I love the Robert Thompson, Dale Carrick strike force. Robert Thompson, a player that I loved when he was here. He's just a big cult hero, a big Dimitar Berbatov of the lower leagues. Ooh. This gorgeous first touch and his wee turns that he does and his arrowed finishes. I've got so much time for Robert Thompson. I think he's a brilliant player to watch. He can wind you up something awful because of his kind of weird lanky style, but I have so much time for him. And Dale Carrick's always a player that's had an eye for goal, and always a player I've liked, and always a player I think's a bit underappreciated. He scored quite a few goals for Airdrie, and then he rocked up at Stirling Albion down a division, and I just felt like he was a player who'd still score a good number of goals in League 1. So my 2 good are Stirling Albion, firstly because I want to curse them, and secondly because they have been too good for everyone they've played over the past 7 weeks or so.
Curse or no curse, could be quite an interesting tussle in the rest of the season. There's still a few fixtures to come between the two, and yeah, as it stands, I think I'm quite looking forward to them, but yeah, we'll see. So my 2 good was a bit unsure here. Was going to go with Morton, but I'm going to change it and go with Ayr and Morton, but change it again a little bit. Just imagine if Ayr and Morton got promoted together. They really, one of the 2 of them could really become this year's Arbroath, and you might get all the neutrals rooting for them. But just think about that for a second. Imagine those 2 could pull that off. I'd really like a top flight Kelly Ayr as well, I must say. That
would be good. The idea of Capello in the top flight is something that fills me with joy. I just think that would be great. And Capello is a brilliant stadium. Everyone thinks I hate it because I don't fit in the main stand, which is partially true. But I love it as a stadium. I just hate the main stand legroom. Like the rest of the stadium, I think it's a brilliant place to watch football. I think when it's rocking, like it's got a really intense, intimidating atmosphere. You've got fans right on top of the players. It's a proper old school stadium down like a street. It's like going back in time. I could make a comment about Greenock there, but I won't. But it's a fantastic place to watch football, and I think it'd be a wonderful addition to the top flight that would annoy all the right people.
Yeah, I think I could almost just say that You're Too Good is probably just the Championship in general at the moment. The league table's incredible, no one seems to know what's going on, and it's going to be really fascinating to see how it pans out. And yeah, if it panned out in that sort of a way with Morton just winning the league, that would I'm sure there'd be quite a few fans that wouldn't be happy about that, but from my point of view, I think that would be quite enjoyable to see.
Bold prediction.
Welcome to Bold Predictions, the time where me and Chris McMillan put our reputations, if we have them, on the line by saying something really bold that will definitely not come back to haunt us. And my bold prediction actually leads on from your point that you were making in Too Good, Too Bad there. And my bold prediction is that this is Ayr United's time to finally get promoted. Now, there are a few reasons for that. Firstly, they're really, really good at the moment. Secondly, and I know that he's from the wrong side of Sheffield, but I really like Lee Bullen as a manager. I think I
am interested to know how many Sheffield Wednesday fans took up that offer of, I think it was just going to an Ayr match for free if you had a Wednesday season ticket.
There must be some, because they love Lee Bullen down there. They are Lee Bullen daft.
But they're probably very lazy. It's a long way.
Yeah, that's alienated half of Sheffield, but he's already alienated anyway, so it doesn't matter. But no, it's Ayr United's time, and we've seen Ayr have had, under Ian McCall, they had a brilliant couple of seasons actually, but they had the season with Shankland where he scored an obscene number of goals. They had the likes of Alan Forrest and guys like that. They had Stephen Kelly down on loan there, who's a player that I'm a huge fan of. But this championship, look at the teams about them, right? Morton. I think Morton's squad doesn't have the depth to go all the way in the title fight. Inverness seem to be a bit hit and miss, but they're not exciting me in any way. Queen's Park do excite me, but they always deflate me when I watch them. I feel like they've got a great squad on paper, and I get really excited at the prospect. And I saw them on TV against Cove last night, and it was rubbish. Like, they've got a really exciting group of players there, and an unusual group of players for lower league Scottish football. And I like the Owen Coyle as manager aspect. I find that just a wee bit surreal, but.
Coyle.
They're just a bit. They don't. There's something about them that they don't quite turn it on every week. Same goes for Partick Thistle. There's a group of players that excites me, but they're fifth in the league and they've been absolutely dreadful for the past 4 or 5 weeks.
Partick Thistle or Partick Thistle.
That's what they do, isn't it?
You ever heard? Did you hear Philip O'Clair on the Football Weekly where he says Rabio is Rabio is Rabio? Thistle or Thistle or Thistle. It's never ever going to change, is it?
And then we've got Dundee, everyone's favourites for the league, who are sick and really uninspiring. And then a club who I like the look of their squad, but I don't think they're quite there yet, is Raith Rovers with Ian Murray. And then you've got Cove, Hamilton and Arbroath, who are all kind of bottom feeders in the league at the minute and not looking like they're going to do an awful lot. So this is Ayr United's time. If Ayr United are going to get into Premier League, and I'm actually pointing, we're not doing this on camera, but I'm actually pointing as if I'm telling Lee Bullen that this is his chance. If Ayr United are going to get into the Premier League, as a club that I've got a wee bit of a soft spot for, I think we both do, we went to uni down there. If Ayr United are going to get into Premier League, Lee Bullen, your time is now.
Well, let me point a finger at you. If Capello in the top flight would be exciting to you, how exciting is Somerset in the top flight? And
they're going to put a cover on the really open bit of terracing at Somerset Park, so if you're in the home end, which I've only been a couple of times, but you're not going to get drenched. So you've got a huge bit of terracing, Premier League, be fantastic.
Well, I'll just quickly talk about the Championship, because the last time on the podcast I said it was Partick Thistle, and they've lost 4 in the league, conceded 4 against Queen's Park, 4 against Ayr, 3 against Raith. I've Dundee today, Morton next after that, and yeah, I got it. You said this was about a reputation. I got that massively wrong, and then just slated Thistle as you were talking about them, because why did I pick Thistle? I knew Thistle weren't going to be top, but I just thought I'd say it anyway.
For someone who spent the vast majority of your life in the West End of Glasgow, you should have known what was coming.
Yeah, well, that's that is it. And yeah, you said Ayr, I'll say Morton. Go on for the next one.
That's our bold prediction.
Yeah.
Let's see where we are in a month's time.
Yeah,
those two teams are sitting 8th and 9th in the league.
I fancy Morton to beat Thistle anyway now. So.
Well, that's all we've got time for on this episode of the Rock and Goal podcast. Thank you to Chris for joining me, and even more special thank you to Calvin for joining us on a match day when I don't think my head would be in the right place to do that sort of stuff. So, consummate professional that he was. We hope you've enjoyed listening. We have to do the bit where we say like, subscribe, share.
5-star review.
5-star review,
Yeah.
do all that great stuff that helps us, because the more 5-star reviews, the more we get paid.
Yes. Yes.
Because we can't get paid any less. So the more 5-star reviews, the more that you help to fund our Gregs on a match day. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening.
Yes, thank you very much. Pleasure.